The sleek glass walls of Seoul's bustling business district reflected the morning sun as Na-rae adjusted her blazer, standing before the elevator doors of the startup hub building. Inside her modern office space, the marketing department buzzed with activity, but Na-rae noticed the familiar sideways glances from her colleagues. At 28, she was the youngest team member, and despite her innovative ideas, her suggestions often fell on deaf ears. And if you want a handsome CEO in your life and love videos like this, subscribe to our channel to have 10 years of luck in your life. The conference room's digital clock displayed 9:45 a.m. as Na-rae arranged her presentation materials with methodical precision. Her colleagues filtered in, their conversations dropping to whispers as they took their seats. Senior Marketing Director Park, a man in his 50s who had never fully embraced Na-rae's modern marketing approaches, settled at the head of the table with an air of authority that made Na-rae's hands tremble slightly as she connected her laptop to the projector. The quarterly marketing strategy meeting will now begin, Director Park announced, his voice carrying the weight of years of traditional business practices. Na-rae stood, her carefully prepared slides illuminating the screen behind her. As she began her presentation on digital marketing trends, she couldn't help but notice Young-ah, her immediate supervisor, typing rapidly on her phone, barely concealing her disinterest. The memory hit Na-rae unexpectedly, as it often did during moments of professional stress. 6 months ago, on a rainy Sunday afternoon, she had forgotten her umbrella at Min-soo's apartment. The walk up the 3 flights of stairs to his unit felt routine after 2 years of dating. She had her own key, but something made her pause before inserting it into the lock. Through the door, she heard laughter, Min-soo's deep chuckle and a feminine giggle she knew all too well. The scene unfolded like a slow-motion sequence in a drama. Na-rae's key turned in the lock, the door swung open, and there they were, Min-soo and Soo-yeon, her best friends since university, entangled on the couch she had helped him choose. The shopping bags in Na-rae's hands dropped to the floor, the sound alerting them to her presence. Soo-yeon's face, usually so composed and friendly, transformed into an expression of guilt and shock. Min-soo scrambled to his feet, his excuses already forming on his lips. Na-rae, wait, it's not. But it was exactly what it looked like. The scattered clothes, the wine glasses on the coffee table, the intimate atmosphere that had been shattered by her arrival. Everything told the story she never wanted to read. Back in the present, Na-rae gripped the presentation remote tighter, forcing herself to focus on the sales projections displayed before her. Director Park was asking a question about traditional marketing channels, his tone suggesting skepticism about her digital-first approach. Na-rae answered confidently, her voice steady despite the emotional turmoil churning beneath her professional exterior. That evening, after the meeting concluded with lukewarm reception to her ideas, Na-rae sat alone in her apartment, surrounded by the remnants of her relationship with Min-soo and Soo-yeon. Photos, gifs, shared memories, all of it felt tainted now. Her phone buzzed continuously with messages from both of them, their explanations and apologies blending into a cacophony of betrayal. With determined movements, Na-rae began removing their presence from her life. She untagged herself from photos on social media, deleted their contact information, and packed away every gift and memento into boxes labeled Donate. As she worked, she discovered a business card that had fallen from her wallet, an advertisement for a women's support group specifically focused on healing from betrayal. The group met in a warm, welcoming space in Gangnam, filled with comfortable chairs and so.
FT lighting.
Na-rae hesitated at the entrance, her hand trembling on the door handle. Inside, women of various ages sat in a circle, their faces showing different stages of healing. The facilitator, a compassionate woman in her 40s named Ms. Kim, gestured for Na-rae to take an empty seat. That first evening, Na-rae didn't speak much, but she listened. She heard stories that echoed her own pain, witnessed strength in women who had emerged from similar betrayals, and felt, for the first time since discovering Min-soo and Soo-yeon, that she wasn't alone. The weight of isolation began to lift, replaced by a sense of community and understanding. As she drove home that night, Na-rae made 3 decisions that would reshape her future, She would block both Min-soo and Soo-yeon on all platforms. She would channel her energy into her career advancement, and she would return to the support group next week. The city lights of Seoul streamed past her car windows, and for the first time in months, she felt the faintest glimmer of hope. The support group met every Wednesday evening in a renovated office building. Tonight marked Nare's third session, and the familiar faces of women who had attended previous meetings greeted her with understanding smiles. Ms. Kim, the facilitator, had arranged the chairs in their usual circle, creating an atmosphere of equality and openness. "Welcome back, everyone," Ms. Kim began, her voice carrying the warmth that had drawn Nare back week after week. "Tonight, we have a new member joining us, and Nare has expressed interest in sharing her story." The gentle encouragement in Ms. Kim's tone gave Nare the confidence to speak. As Nare recounted the details of Min-soo's betrayal with Soo-yeon, she noticed heads nodding in recognition. A woman named Ji-hoon, who had shared her own story of workplace betrayal the previous week, reached over and squeezed Nare's hand. The physical contact, simple yet profound, broke something inside her. Tears flowed freely as she described not just the betrayal, but the aftermath, the sleepless nights, the loss of appetite, the constant second-guessing of every memory. "What hurts most," Nare admitted, her voice steadying, "isn't just losing Min-soo. It's losing my best friend. Soo-yeon was there for every major moment of my adult life. Now I question if any of it was real." The group listened intently, offering tissues and understanding nods. After the session, several women approached Nare, sharing their contact information and inviting her to join their group chat. Among them was Hae-won, a successful business owner who had rebuilt her life after a similar experience. "The best revenge," Hae-won told her, "is living well and achieving your dreams." These words resonated with Nare as she walked into her office the next morning. The startup's open plan workspace hummed with activity, but today she viewed it differently. Instead of seeing the challenges that had often intimidated her, she saw opportunities. During the morning team meeting, when Yoonga asked for ideas about their upcoming digital campaign, Nare spoke up without hesitation. "Our target audience spends an average of 4 hours daily on social media," she began, pulling up research she had conducted the previous weekend. "I propose we create an interactive campaign that leverages user-generated content across multiple platforms." The confidence in her voice surprised even herself. Yoonga raised an eyebrow, clearly not expecting such a detailed proposal. Other team members, who had typically scrolled through their phones during Nare's presentations, now looked up with interest. Nare continued, outlining metrics, engagement strategies, and potential partnerships with influential creators. As she presented her ideas, movement near the conference room door caught her attention. Ji-hoon, the company's CEO, had paused to listen. Known for his innovative approach to business and hands-on leadership style, Ji-hoon Rar Ely attended department meetings. Yet here he was, leaning against the doorframe, his expression thoughtful as Nare explained her vision for the campaign. After the meeting, as Nare gathered her materials, Ji-hoon approached her desk. "That was an impressive presentation," he said, his casual tone belying the importance of the moment. "I'd like to hear more about your ideas for user engagement. Do you have time this afternoon?" Nare managed to maintain her professional composure as she agreed to the meeting, but inside, her heart raced. Ji-hoon was known for recognizing and nurturing talent within the company, and an invitation to discuss ideas directly with him was a rare opportunity. The afternoon meeting exceeded her expectations. Ji-hoon listened intently as Nare expanded on her morning presentation, asking insightful questions that helped her refine her concepts further. As their discussion concluded, he made an unexpected proposal. "I've been looking for someone with fresh perspectives to assist me with several key projects," Ji-hoon explained, his manner direct but encouraging. "Your understanding of digital trends and user behavior aligns with where I want to take the company. Would you be interested in becoming my personal assistant?" The offer took Nare by surprise. It wasn't just a promotion, it was an opportunity to work directly with one of Seoul's most innovative young CEOs. As she considered the proposal, she thought about the women from her support group, about Haewon's words regarding living well, and about her own desire to prove herself. "I would be honored," she replied, her voice steady and confident. As Nare packed up her desk that evening, preparing to move to her new workspace near Ji-hoon's office, she received a notification from the support group chat. The women were planning a weekend gathering to celebrate another member's job promotion. Nare smiled, realizing she now had her own success to share. The following weeks brought dramatic changes to Nare's professional life. Her new position as Ji-hoon's personal assistant placed her at the center of the company's most ambitious project to date, a revolutionary social commerce platform that would integrate artificial intelligence with user shopping behavior. The project consumed her days, filling them with strategy sessions, market research, and endless cups of coffee shared with Ji-hoon over spreadsheets and wireframes. One particular evening, as Seoul's skyline transformed into a constellation of office lights, Nare and Ji-hoon sat in his corner office, surrounded by whiteboards covered in flowcharts and user journey maps. Ji-hoon had loosened his tie, a rare gesture that signaled their transition from formal work hours to the kind of creative brainstorming that often produced their best ideas. "The current market solutions are too fragmented," Ji-hoon explained, sketching a diagram on the whiteboard. "Users jump between apps for product research, price comparison, and purchases. We need to streamline this." Nare watched as he outlined his vision, noting how his enthusiasm mirrored her own dedication to innovation. As they worked, Nare's phone buzzed repeatedly. She had been ignoring the notifications, but during a brief break, she glanced at the screen. 5 messages from Min-soo lit up her display. "I miss you. Can we talk? I made a mistake. Just coffee. That's all I'm asking. Nare, please." The messages struck her like physical blows, but not with the same devastating force they might have had months ago. She silenced her phone, returning her attention to Ji-hoon's explanation of their platform's potential impact on the market. Yet Min-soo's persistence had planted a seed of distraction that proved difficult to ignore. Later that week, while reviewing user interface mockups with the design team, Nare's office email pinged with a message from Soo-yeon. The subject line read, "Project Collaboration Opportunity." Inside, Soo-yeon had written a carefully worded proposal offering her marketing agency's services for the new platform launch. The email was professional, almost clinical, but the postscript revealed her true intentions. "I know I have no right to ask for your forgiveness, but I miss my best friend. Maybe working together could help us heal." Nare's finger hovered over the delete button. The proposal itself was solid. Soo-yeon's agency had an impressive track record with similar launches. From a purely business perspective, they would be a valuable partner. But the thought of sitting across from Soo-yeon in meetings, of maintaining professional courtesy while carrying the weight of betrayal, made Nare's stomach turn. She drafted a brief response declining the offer, citing potential conflicts of interest. As she clicked send, Ji-hoon appeared at her desk, carrying 2 cups of afternoon coffee, a habit they had developed over their long strategy sessions. "Everything okay?" he asked, noting her tense expression. "You seem distracted today." Nare considered deflecting his concern but found herself wanting to be honest. "Just some complicated personal history trying to make its way into our professional space," she explained, accepting the coffee.
Yehon nodded thoughtfully.
"Sometimes the hardest part of moving forward is deciding what to leave behind," he said, his words carrying the weight of personal experience. "Want to take a break? There's a new cafe on the roof garden. Better view than this office, and I could use your insight on the user engagement metrics." The roof garden offered a panoramic view of Seoul's business district. As they discussed the project's technical aspects, Nare felt the tension from Min-soo's messages and Soo-yeon's email gradually dissipate. The work energized her, especially when Ji-hoon valued her input on critical decisions. "Your perspective on user behavior patterns has really shaped this project," he commented, reviewing her latest analysis. "You see connections others miss." The compliment warmed her more than the afternoon sun. As they wrapped up their rooftop meeting, Nare's phone buzzed again. Another message from Min-soo. This time, she didn't even look at it. Instead, She focused on explaining her ideas for improving the platform's social features, watching as Ji-hoon added her suggestions to their project outline. The contrast between her past and present struck her forcefully in that moment. While Min-soo and Soo-yeon represented a chapter of her life marked by betrayal and self-doubt, her work with Ji-hoon opened possibilities she hadn't imagined for herself. The platform project wasn't just about creating a new technology, it was becoming a symbol of her own transformation. That evening, as she prepared to leave the office, Na-rae did something she had been postponing. She created email filters to automatically archive messages from both Min-soo and Soo-yeon. Their attempts to reconnect would no longer interrupt her focus or disturb her peace of mind. The project, her career, and her personal growth deserved her full attention. The company's quarterly review meeting filled the main conference room with executives and team leaders from every department. Na-rae stood at the podium, her presentation materials carefully organized on her tablet. The past 3 months of work with Ji-hoon had refined her understanding of the market and strengthened her confidence. As she began her presentation on the social commerce platform, she noticed a marked difference in how her colleagues regarded her compared to 6 months ago. Our research indicates that 78% of users abandon their shopping carts due to decision paralysis, Na-rae explained, her voice carrying clearly across the room. Our AI-driven social commerce platform addresses this by integrating peer recommendations with real-time shopping behavior analysis. She proceeded to demonstrate the prototype, showcasing how the system would guide users through their purchasing decisions while maintaining engagement through social features. Director Park, who had previously dismissed her ideas, leaned forward in his chair, his interest evident. The CFO nodded approvingly at the projected revenue models, while the development team leads took rapid notes. Questions from the audience revealed genuine engagement rather than the skepticism she had faced in previous meetings. After the presentation, colleagues who had once barely acknowledged her presence now approached with questions and compliments. Young-ah, her former supervisor, even suggested collaborating on future marketing initiatives. The shift in dynamics wasn't lost on Na-rae. She had earned their respect through consistent performance and innovative thinking. Later that evening, Ji-hoon invited her to his office for a debrief. The sunset painted the city's skyline in shades of orange and purple, creating a warm atmosphere in the usually formal space. "You commanded that room today," he said, settling into one of the comfortable chairs by the window rather than behind his desk. "They saw what I saw in you months ago." The casual setting encouraged a different kind of conversation. Ji-hoon shared stories from his early career, revealing vulnerabilities she hadn't expected from someone so successful. "I almost lost everything on my first startup," he admitted, his usual confident demeanor softening. "The fear of failure nearly paralyzed me. But each setback taught me something valuable about business and about myself." Na-rae found herself opening up in return. "I used to think confidence came from having everything figured out," she said, thinking about how her perception of success had changed. "Now I understand it comes from facing challenges and learning from them." Ji-hoon nodded, understanding flickering in his eyes. "Speaking of challenges," he said carefully, "I noticed how you handled the questions about user trust during the presentation. It reminded me of something I've been meaning to ask. What made you so insightful about betrayal of trust in user relationships?" The question caught Na-rae off guard. For a moment, she considered deflecting, but something in Ji-hoon's genuine interest and his own willingness to share his struggles made her reconsider. "I learned it firsthand," she found herself saying. "My ex-boyfriend and my best friend taught me everything I know about betrayal of trust." She surprised herself by sharing the story, not the emotional version she had told at the support group, but a measured account of how the experience had shaped her understanding of trust, loyalty, and recovery. Ji-hoon listened intently, asking thoughtful questions that showed genuine concern rather than mere curiosity. "That's why the social trust features in our platform matter so much to me," she concluded. "I understand how vital authentic connections are, whether in personal relationships or user experiences." Ji-hoon was quiet for a moment, processing her words. "Your ability to transform that pain into insight is remarkable," he finally said. "Most people would have let it make them cynical." You've used it to create something valuable. Their conversation continued as night fell over Seoul, touching on their respective experiences with betrayal, recovery, and growth. Ji-hoon shared his own story of a business partner who had attempted to steal his initial startup's intellectual property. "It took me years to trust potential partners again," he admitted. "But without trust, you can't build anything meaningful, in business or in life." The vulnerability they shared that evening shifted something in their dynamic. The professional respect they had developed over months of collaboration deepened into a more nuanced understanding of each other as people who had faced similar challenges and emerged stronger. As Nare drove home that night, she reflected on how differently she now viewed her past experiences. The betrayal that D once threatened to define her had become just one chapter in a longer story of growth and transformation. Her work, her increasing confidence, and her evolving relationship with Ji-hoon were writing new chapters that felt increasingly more significant than the ones she had left behind. Nare's leadership of the social commerce project transformed the office dynamics. Where she had once been relegated to the background, she now commanded attention during strategy meetings. The marketing team gathered around her desk each morning, eager to hear her insights on digital trends and user engagement patterns. The campaign she developed incorporated elements of storytelling with data-driven decision-making. She introduced a feature that allowed users to share their shopping experiences through micro-vlogs, creating an authentic community around the platform. The engagement metrics exceeded projections, catching the attention of industry publications and potential investors. During one particularly successful strategy session, Nare noticed her team members taking notes as she spoke, their expressions showing genuine respect rather than the polite tolerance she had known before. Even Director Park, who had initially resisted her digital-first approach, now regularly sought her opinion on marketing initiatives. That evening, as Nare gathered her belongings to leave the office, her phone lit up with a message from Min-soo. "I'm at the Blue Hour. I know you still come here on Thursdays. Please, just 5 minutes." The Blue Hour had been their regular spot, a cozy bar in Gangnam where they had spent countless evenings planning their future together. Nare's finger hovered over the message, memories threatening to surface. Instead of responding, she opened her group chat with the women from the support group, typing quickly, "Min-soo's at our old place. Trying to force a meeting." Responses came immediately. "Stay strong, Nare. You've come too far. Want us to meet you somewhere else? Remember who you are now." Their support strengthened her resolve. Nare turned off her phone and drove home, deliberately taking a route that avoided passing the Blue Hour. In her apartment, she opened her laptop and continued working on the project presentation, channeling her energy into something productive rather than dwelling on Min-soo's attempt to reconnect. The next morning, she arrived at work early, her mind clear and focused. As she reviewed the previous day's analytics, she made a decision that had been forming gradually over the past few months. Opening her contact list, she began systematically removing connections that no longer serve her growth. Min-soo, Soo-yeon, mutual friends who had chosen sides in their drama, and anyone else who reminded her of that chapter of her life. As she worked, Ji-hoon appeared at her desk with their usual morning coffee. He noticed her determined expression and the open contact list on her screen. "Spring cleaning?" he asked, setting down her cup. "More like life cleaning," Nare replied, accepting the coffee with a grateful smile. "I'm removing anything that doesn't contribute to where I'm going."
Ji-hoon nodded thoughtfully.
Sometimes the hardest part of moving forward is letting go of the familiar, even when it's holding us back. His words carried the weight of personal experience, and Nare found herself wondering about his own story of letting go. Later that day, during a brief break between meetings, Nare received an email from Soo-yeon. The subject line read, "One last try." Inside was a lengthy apology, filled with explanations and pleas for forgiveness. A year ago, such a message would have thrown Nare into emotional turmoil. Now, she read it with a detached clarity, understanding that Soo-yeon's need for forgiveness was not her responsibility to fulfill. She drafted a brief response. "I wish you well, but our paths have diverged. please respect my boundaries and do not contact me again? After sending it, she felt lighter, as if she had finally set down a heavy burden she hadn't realized she was still carrying. That evening, as she prepared for a crucial presentation the next day, Nare reflected on how much had changed. The betrayal that had once seemed like the end of her world had become the catalyst for her transformation. Her career was flourishing. She had genuine friendships with the women from her support group, and she was developing a connection with Ji-hoon that felt both professional and personally enriching. The city lights sparkled outside her office window as she finalized her presentation slides. Seoul had never looked more beautiful, perhaps because she was finally seeing it through eyes unclouded by past pain. The future stretched before her, full of possibilities she had created for herself. The project deadline loomed closer, bringing with it intense working sessions that often stretched into the evening. Nare and Ji-hoon found themselves spending more time together, their collaborative rhythm becoming more natural with each passing day. The office would empty as other employees headed home, leaving them surrounded by wireframes, market analysis reports, and the gentle hum of the building's ventilation system. One particularly challenging evening, as they wrestled with user interface improvements, Ji-hoon suggested they take their work to a nearby restaurant. "We both need proper food," he said, noting how Nare had been surviving on vending machine snacks. "There's a quiet place around the corner where we can continue working." The restaurant turned out to be an intimate fusion establishment, tucked away from the main street's bustle. Low lighting and private booths created an atmosphere that felt distinctly different from their usual working environment. As they settled into their seats, Nare noticed how Ji-hoon's typically formal demeanor softened in this setting. Their conversation naturally drifted from work to personal interests. Ji-hoon revealed his passion for traditional architecture and how it influenced his approach to user experience design. Nare found herself sharing stories about her childhood dream of becoming a writer and how it evolved into her love for creating marketing narratives. "Sometimes the paths we don't take lead us exactly where we need to be," Ji-hoon observed, his eyes meeting hers across the table. The moment held a weight that made Nare's heart skip a beat, but she quickly redirected her attention to the menu. The evening progressed, and their discussion meandered between project details and personal revelations. Ji-hoon spoke about his family's initial disapproval of his entrepreneurial ambitions, while Nare described her journey through the support group and how it had changed her perspective on strength and vulnerability. As they walked back to the office to collect their belongings, the city's nighttime energy pulsed around them. Nare felt a familiar tension building in her chest, the same hesitation that had kept her emotional walls firmly in place since Min-soo's betrayal. Ji-hoon must have sensed her internal struggle because he paused beneath a street lamp, turning to face her. "You know," he began, his voice carrying a gentleness she had come to associate with their private conversations. "Fear can be protective, but it can also become a prison. I've watched you transform this company's approach to user engagement, yet you seem hesitant to engage with your own potential for happiness." The observation struck close to home. Nare found herself examining the careful distance she had maintained, not just from Ji-hoon, but from the possibility of any new emotional connection. "My last relationship taught me some hard lessons about trust," she admitted. Ji-hoon's response surprised her. "Would you design a user interface based solely on negative experiences?" he asked. "Or would you learn from those experiences to create something better?" The parallel between her professional approach and personal life hadn't occurred to her before. In her work, she consistently used past failures as stepping stones to innovation, yet in her personal life, she had allowed past hurt to become a barrier to growth. Back at the office, as they gathered their things, Ji-hoon made one final observation that would stay with Nare long into the night. "The same courage that helped you rebuild your career exists in every aspect of you. The question is whether you're ready to apply it beyond the office walls." The drive home that night felt different. Nare found herself analyzing her emotional barriers with the same systematic approach she applied to project challenges. Her fear of being hurt again was real, but so was the possibility of missing out on something meaningful by remaining locked in past trauma. Nare's decision to enroll in the leadership development course marked another significant step in her evolution. The program, held in a modern training center in Gangnam, brought together ambitious professionals from various industries. During the first session, as participants introduced themselves, Nare noticed how naturally she commanded attention when speaking about her role in developing the social commerce platform. The course curriculum challenged her to examine her leadership style through practical exercises and theoretical frameworks. One particular assignment required participants to analyze their personal growth journey and identify pivotal moments that shaped their leadership approach. Nare found herself drawing unexpected parallels between her recovery from betrayal and her emergence as a leader. During group discussions, she shared insights about resilience and adaptation that resonated deeply with her classmates. Her experience of rebuilding trust in professional relationships while maintaining healthy boundaries became a case study in emotional intelligence and authentic leadership. The course instructor, Dr. Lee, often used Nare's examples to illustrate key concepts about transformational leadership. That evening, at her regular support group meeting, Nare felt a shift in her role within the circle. Instead of seeking guidance, she found herself offering it to newer members. She shared her story not as a victim of betrayal, but as someone who had used that experience as a catalyst for growth. The women listened intently as she described her professional achievements and growing self-confidence. "When I first came here," Nare explained to the group, "I could barely speak about what happened without crying. Now I understand that what Min-soo and Soo-yeon did wasn't about my worth. It was about their character. That realization freed me to focus on my own growth." Her words particularly touched a recently joined member who had been struggling with similar feelings of inadequacy after discovering her husband's infidelity. Nare recognized her own past pain in the woman's tearful expression and stayed after the meeting to offer additional support. The atmosphere in the room suddenly shifted when Min-soo appeared in the doorway. He stood awkwardly, his presence creating immediate tension among the group members. Some women instinctively moved closer to Nare, forming a protective circle. Ms. Kim, the facilitator, stepped forward with a firm but professional demeanor. "This is a private support group," Ms. Kim stated clearly, but Min-soo's attention remained fixed on Nare. "I just need 5 minutes," he pleaded, his voice carrying a desperation that once would have weakened Nare's resolve. "I've been trying to reach you for months." Nare felt the familiar surge of anxiety, but it was different now. Instead of overwhelming her, it sharpened her focus. She observed Min-soo's disheveled appearance, the dark circles under his eyes, and his nervous gestures with clinical detachment. The man who had once held such power over her emotions now seemed smaller, less significant. The other group members watched as Nare stood, her posture straight and confident. She thought about her leadership course, about Ji-hoon's quiet support, about the strength she had built over months of healing. The moment felt like a final test of her growth. "Whatever you need to say," she responded calmly. "You can say it another time, through proper channels. This space is not for you." Her voice remained steady, carrying the same authority she used in corporate presentations. The clarity of her boundary setting had an immediate effect. Min-soo's shoulders slumped, the fight visibly leaving him. He hadn't expected this version of Nare, someone who could stand firmly in her power without anger or drama. After he left, the support group erupted in supportive comments and proud observations about Nare's handling of the situation. One member hugged her, whispering, "You showed us what healing looks like." The aftermath of Min-soo's appearance at the support group lingered in Nare's mind as she arrived at work the next morning. Rather than feeling shaken, she felt an unexpected clarity about the need for a definitive confrontation. The universe, it seemed, had decided that loose ends needed tying. During her lunch break, Nare composed a message to Min-soo, requesting a meeting in a public cafe near her office. She chose the location deliberately, a modern, busy establishment where she often conducted business meetings. The environment would reinforce the professional distance she intended to maintain. When Min-soo arrived the following day, Nare was already seated at a corner table, laptop open, dressed in her corporate attire. The contrast between them was immediately apparent. She emanated composure and success, while he appeared uncertain, almost diminished in her presence. "You look different," he said, settling into the chair across from her. The comment held a mix of admiration and regret that Nare might have once found satisfying. Now it felt irrelevant to who she had become. "I am different," she responded, her voice carrying the same assured tone she used in board meetings. "I didn't arrange this meeting to discuss changes, Min-soo. I'm here because your appearance at my support group crossed a line, and we need to establish clear boundaries." Min-soo began his practiced explanation, a narrative she had already predicted. The mistake of getting involved with Soo-yeon, the regret that followed, the realization of what he had lost. As he spoke, Nare found herself analyzing his words with the same precision she applied to market research, noting the patterns, identifying the underlying motivations. "I've changed too," he insisted, leaning forward. "Soo-yeon and I ended things months ago. I've been in therapy, working on myself. If you could just give me another chance." Nare held up her hand, stopping his words mid-sentence. "Your personal growth journey is your own," she stated firmly. "I'm glad you're working on yourself, but that has nothing to do with me anymore. My life has moved in a different direction." "Because of that, CEO?" Min-soo asked, a hint of bitterness seeping into his voice. "I've heard rumors about you two working late together." The attempt to shift focus onto her relationship with Ji-hoon might once have flustered her. Instead, Nare felt a surge of professional indignation. "My career success and personal relationships are not up for discussion," she responded coolly. "This meeting is about establishing boundaries that you need to respect." Nare opened her laptop, turning it to face him. On the screen was a document she had prepared, listing specific behaviors that needed to stop. The unexpected appearances, the messages, the attempts to connect through mutual friends. She had approached this conversation like any other business negotiation, with clear terms and expectations. Min-soo stared at the document, then back at Nare, finally seeming to understand that the woman before him was fundamentally different from the one he had betrayed. His shoulders slumped as he absorbed the reality that his carefully prepared explanations and apologies had no power here. "I really did love you," he said quietly, a last attempt at emotional connection. "Perhaps," Nare replied, her tone softening slightly. "But love without respect and loyalty isn't enough. I've learned to expect more from others and from myself." After Min-soo left, Nare remained at the cafe, processing the interaction. She felt neither triumph nor pain, just a peaceful certainty that this chapter of her life was truly closing. Opening her phone, she messaged her support group, sharing the outcome of the meeting. Their responses flooded in, celebrating her strength and clarity. Later that evening, as she recounted the confrontation to Ji-hoon during their project review session, he listened attentively before offering an observation that resonated deeply. "Some people enter our lives to teach us what we don't want, clearing the path for what we do want." The presentation date for the social commerce platform loomed just days away, bringing with it an intensity that energized the entire office. Nare spent countless hours refining the demonstration, ensuring every feature showcased the platform's innovative approach to user engagement. The pressure felt different now, not the anxious weight she had known in her earlier career, but rather an excited anticipation of showing the world what she had helped create. During a late-night preparation session, Nare noticed Ji-hoon's unusual quietness as he reviewed the presentation materials. His typical confident demeanor seemed subdued, and his attention kept drifting to the Seoul skyline visible from his office windows. Recognizing the signs of stress she had once carried herself, Nare paused their work. "You've been staring at that same slide for 20 minutes, she observed gently. "What's really on your mind?" Ji-hoon's careful professional mask slipped slightly as he turned to face her. "The board has high expectations for this platform," he admitted, running a hand through his usually immaculate hair. "Most of them didn't support my vision initially. They thought I was too young, too inexperienced to lead such an ambitious project. This presentation isn't just about the platform, it's about proving them wrong." The vulnerability in his confession touched Nare deeply. She had always seen Ji-hoon as the embodiment of confident leadership, but now she recognized the familiar weight of proving oneself that she knew so well. His admission created a new dimension to their relationship, shifting the dynamic from mentor and protege to true equals facing similar challenges. When I started this project, Ji-hoon continued, his voice carrying a rare uncertainty, everyone said I was trying to compete with giants. That a small company like ours couldn't innovate in a space dominated by major corporations. Sometimes, late at night like this, those doubts creep back in. Nare thought carefully about her response, understanding the importance of this moment. You know what I learned from my support group? She began, moving to sit beside him. That sometimes our biggest breakthroughs come right after our moments of greatest doubt. It's not about proving others wrong, it's about proving ourselves right. Ji-hoon looked at her with newfound appreciation, seeing how far she had come from the uncertain marketing team member he had first noticed months ago. When did you become so wise? He asked, a small smile breaking through his serious expression. I had a good teacher, she replied, returning his smile. Someone who showed me that innovation comes from understanding both technology and human nature. That true leadership isn't about never having doubts, it's about moving forward despite them. Their eyes met in a moment of shared understanding, the late-night city lights creating a gentle ambience around them. The air felt ridged with unspoken possibilities, but both recognized that their immediate focus needed to remain on the upcoming presentation. Returning to their work with renewed energy, they spent the next few hours refining their strategy. Nare watched as Ji-hoon's confidence gradually returned, his natural leadership qualities emerging stronger for having acknowledged his vulnerabilities. She realized that their relationship had evolved into something unique, a partnership built on mutual respect, shared challenges, and genuine understanding. As she drove home that night, Nare reflected on how differently she now approached moments of uncertainty. Where she had once seen only potential for failure, she now saw opportunities for growth. Her phone buzzed with a message from Ji-hoon. Thank you for tonight. Sometimes the strongest leaders are the ones who help others find their strength. The message warmed her heart, but also brought a flutter of nervous excitement about the upcoming presentation. Tomorrow would test everything they had built together, not just the platform, but the trust and partnership they had developed. As she prepared for bed, Nare felt ready for whatever challenges lay ahead, knowing she had finally found her true professional and personal footing. The day of the presentation arrived with a kind of crisp autumn morning that made Seoul's glass buildings shimmer. Nare arrived early, her presentation materials meticulously prepared, her confidence steady despite the stakes. The company's largest conference room filled quickly with board members, potential investors, and industry journalists, creating an atmosphere of anticipation. Nare stood at the podium, surveying the room as attendees settled into their seats. Ji-hoon sat in the front row, his presence providing silent support. As she began her presentation, her voice carried the authority of someone who had found her true calling. She guided the audience through the platform's innovative features, demonstrating how their AI-driven social commerce solution would revolutionize online shopping behavior. The presentation flowed seamlessly as Nare shared user engagement metrics, market analysis, and implementation strategies. She spoke about trust in digital spaces with an authenticity that came from her own journey of rebuilding trust in her personal life. The audience leaned forward in their seats, engaged by her compelling narrative of how technology could create genuine connections in an increasingly isolated digital world. Just as she reached the section about user privacy and security measures, her phone, connected to the presentation system, displayed an incoming message. The notification appeared briefly on the screen before she could dismiss it, but long enough for the front row to see. From Sooyeon subject, Your Past Exposed, new blog launched tomorrow preview. Nare, as a professional courtesy, I wanted to warn you. The blog goes live at midnight. Every detail about. Nare's heart skipped a beat, but years of professional experience kept her expression neutral as she smoothly continued her presentation. Her mind raced with the implications of Sooyeon's threat while her voice remained steady, discussing user authentication protocols. She caught Ji-hoon's concerned glance but maintained her focus on the audience. As she approached the presentation's conclusion, Nare made a split-second decision that would define not just her career, but her personal journey of healing. Instead of moving to her prepared closing remarks, she took a deep breath and addressed the room with unexpected candor. "Before we conclude," she began, her voice clear and controlled, "I want to share something personal that directly relates to why this platform matters so much. 2 years ago, I experienced a profound betrayal that shattered my trust in both personal and professional relationships. That experience taught me something crucial about digital spaces and human connect. Tyan." The room fell silent, every eye fixed on her as she continued. "Our platform isn't just about facilitating transactions or creating another social network. It's about rebuilding trust in digital relationships. Every feature we've developed, from our verification systems to our community guidelines, stems from understanding how valuable trust is and how carefully it must be protected." Nare noticed Jihoon sitting straighter in his chair, his expression showing both surprise and pride. She pressed on, her voice growing stronger. "Tomorrow, someone from my past plans to publish personal details about my life, thinking it will shame me or damage our launch. Instead, I'm choosing to own my story, because it's that very experience that helped shape this platform's commitment to authentic connection and user protection." The audience remained captivated as she tied her personal narrative back to the platform's core mission of creating safe, trustworthy digital spaces. As she concluded, the room erupted in applause. Board members nodded appreciatively, understanding how personal experience had informed professional innovation. Investors began immediately discussing expansion possibilities. After the presentation, as the room buzzed with excited conversation, Jihoon approached Nare. "That was incredibly brave," he said quietly. "And brilliant. You just transformed a potential crisis into our platform's strongest selling point." Nare felt a weight lift from her shoulders as she realized the truth in his words. By choosing to tell her own story, she had reclaimed her narrative from those who might have used it against her. The threat that was meant to shame her had instead become the final step in her journey of healing. Later that evening, as celebration drinks flowed and contracts were being drafted, Nare received another message from Suyun. This one was different. A brief acknowledgement of respect and an assurance that the blog post would never see daylight. Nare archived the message without responding, knowing she had finally moved beyond the need for either revenge or reconciliation. As the evening wound down, Jihoon found Nare on the office building's rooftop garden, where they had spent so many hours planning this day. "So," he said, standing beside her as they looked out over the city lights, "what's next for you?" Nare smiled, feeling truly free for the first time in years. "I'm thinking of starting a mentorship program for women in tech," she replied. "Help others transform their challenges into strengths." She turned to face him, recognizing the warmth in his expression. "But first, I think I'm ready for that dinner you've been trying to ask me about for weeks." Jihoon's surprised laugh echoed across the rooftop. "Was I that obvious?" "No," she said, taking his hand. "I just finally learned to recognize opportunities worth taking."